myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright when they come and say to you.
Hi, welcome along to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. That is Those Were the Days, and we are here with George Mitchell. Good afternoon, George. How are you?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm fine, thank you.
Good to see you, mate. Which year are we looking at today?
74, 75. Another long season because we're and everything again. The FA Cup, the League Cup, and we go back into the Texaco Cup as holders, of course, to try and retain the trophy. This is a difficult year for Joe Harvey, but having, in my opinion, carried the team for the last 2 or 3 years, he's going to do it again because there's still no money. Where are we in terms of time? Well, if you're interested in the music of the day, Kung Fu Fighting, Carl Douglas was top of the pops. Seasons in the Sun, Jerry Jacks. Waterloo by ABBA, and Rock Your Baby by George McRae. They were the pieces of music that were exciting everybody. And the films, if you went to the cinema, well, it was Blazing Saddles, Towering Inferno, The Trial of Billy Jack, and Young Frankenstein. Well, of those, I'm afraid Blazing Saddles is the only one I would want to go and see. The rest I would regard as rubbish. Joe Harvey hasn't had money to spend for a while now because they're developing the ground. And this year is no different. But this year he brings in 10 new players on the face of it. But 5 of them are people promoted from the juniors, just given professional contracts. The others that are professionals are Mickey Burns is a notable one. Glenn Keeley, a big centre-half from Blackburn, who, the Gallagher Corner never took to, but Glenn Keeley was one of them. And Mick Mahoney, the goalkeeper from Torquay, was another one. But to balance the books, as Harvey was good at, he got rid of some of the older lads. He sold Bob Moncur to Sunderland, got a nice fee for him at the end of his career. And Frank Clark went to Nottingham Forest. There was a reasonable turnaround, but when they balanced the books, he got people in and he put people out. And at the end of the day, it cost Newcastle very, very, very little. And I know the club demanded that of him because of the situation with redeveloping the ground. So that's the squad. It was not a bad squad, but and they certainly give their all in certain ways. But at times, I think they found it difficult. But never mind. Let's see what happens. That's one of the incoming ones. That's Aidan McCaffrey, who got a professional contract. Now I put that one on because Aidan used to get the hell out of the Gallagher Corner because of his hair. If he come anywhere near the Gallagher Corner, they were all offering him curlers and this sort of thing, yeah. and being very, very critical and offering him a haircut and well, lass will look after your hair for your bonny lad and all that sort of thing. And the other thing about him is while he was essentially a centre half, he could play centre forward as well, which is in the modern game was unusual. I mean, you had to go to people like John Charles who did that effectively. Anyway, that was Aidan, and that was in for a bit of fun. And there's a sort of a final photo of Bobby Moncur playing at St James's because he was off to Sunderland, and with the best wishes of everybody. I mean, captain in the Fairs Cup and was a good servant, a good player. So it was nice to see Bobby.
And you chucked this one in as well.
Well, that one should have been in. That one should be next time. That's them recording the record before the next cup final.
Ah, okay. So we'll keep that for another day.
Keep that one for next time. Yeah, that's right. I don't know what the next one. There may be a Middlesbrough one. Is the that's the Middlesbrough squad from the same time, and it's in because the captain of the day, of course, was none other than my friend Graham Souness. You can see him in the front row there.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Next to John Craggs. So it interesting how these people move around but still stay in our vision, if you like. I don't know. I think is that the last of those ones?
We're onto the programs now, mate.
Right. Okay. First game this season. Guess what's a friendly against Queen of the South. We'll go to Queen of the South to play a friendly, and we'll beat them 3-0. But that keeps gets Malcolm McDonald off his scoring start for the season before 3,500 spectators. But obviously that helped Queen of the South out because they wouldn't have lots of money. And then we go straight into the Texaco Cup. And they altered the style of the Texaco Cup this season. They split it into groups. And the winners of each group went into the quarter-final. And we were in Group 4 with Sunderland, Carlisle and Middlesbrough. So the next 3 matches are all Texaco Cup matches. And the first one was against Sunderland. And we make a mess of that one. We lose it 2-0 with John Tudor scoring our goal. But by then, the Mackhams through Bobby Kerr and Vic Hallam were 2-0 up. But a decent crowd for Texaco Cup, 29,000. And the Mackhams team is interesting to look at. Jim Montgomery, of course. Dick Malone, who was a right back who was with them a long time. But left back was Ron Guthrie, who they got from us. Stan Turnant, who was from Burnley. Dave Watson, the big centre-half from Everton. And Bob Monker was in that team. And Bobby Kerr, little attacking winger who was always a thorn in our sides. Billy Hughes, could play either centre forward or number 10, and then Vic Hallam, who was a decent centre forward, dangerous centre forward, but kind of just below international standard, I would say, Vic. But he was a good worker for the Mackhams, and then Pop Robson, of course. So it was all boys at home in this match with all the Geordies that were in the team, and Tony Towers, who was on the left side. Our team was very predictable. McFall, Craig, Alan Kennedy in because Clark had gone to Nottingham Forest, Terry McDermott, Pat Howard, Glenn Keeley, Mickey Burns, Tommy Cassidy, Malcolm MacDonald, John Tudor, and Terry Hibbett. And as I say, we lost that one 2-1. Not a good start to the Texaco Cup. The next one was Carlisle United, and I think everybody thought this would be just turn up and we'll win it. Well, what a surprise they got, because they went to Brunton Park, and at the time bust the record for Brunton Park, 15,000 for a Texaco Cup round for Group 4 match, and I hadn't had that many in Brunton Park before this. Anyway, they came away with a 2-2 draw. They went in the lead at half time. Then on 75 minutes, Mike Barry, Carlisle forward, young forward, who was just making his way into the team, equalised and put the skids under her. Now, lo and behold, just to get our nails biting a little bit, 85 minutes, and Barry Laidlaw, another young Cumbrian, put them 2-1 in the lead, and I thought, oh, well, that's it, the Texaco Cup's gone. But lo and behold, Mickey Burns had scored the first one, popped up on 88 minutes to get an equaliser. So at least we came home with a 2-2 draw. The Carlisle team, I'm trying to always like to look and see what stars or former stars that's in. Well, John Gorman was at left back. He was on his way down from Celtic and elsewhere. And Ray Train, who was a good inside forward with Blackburn Rovers, and Hugh McElmoyle, who was well bobbed around the Manchester clubs for a while, and Leicester, and on his way down the leagues, he ended up at Carlisle for a while, and then he went into Scotland after that. He played until he was nearly 40, Hugh McElmoyle, a very fit bloke. And then lo and behold, Chris Balderstone, who they got from Huddersfield, who was not just a good footballer, he was a great cricketer, played cricket for England and Yorkshire. Our team, and Joe Harvey, true to his word, sends the full squad: McFall, Craig, Kennedy, McDermott, Glenn Keeley, Pat Howard, Mickey Burns, Tommy Cassidy, Malcolm MacDonald, John Tudor, and Terry Hibbert. So Harvey wasn't holding back on the Texaco Cup. He sent the full squad. And so that's the second game of the Group 4. And we're vying for the top between, because we were at 1 point between us and the Mackhams. And Middlesbrough's having a torrid time because they had a bad time against the Mackhams. The next game, the third game, is Middlesbrough, and we have to do well against Middlesbrough to have any chance of going forward. Well, do well we did. The Smoggies came to St James's, and we beat them 4-0. It was it's a match I can remember because it was quite an exciting match, and disappointing attendance. I mean, 11,500, which for a match that would send us through to the quarter-final of this thing. But I think people felt after the first two results that we weren't going anywhere, and so they didn't bother to turn up. So, but we beat them 4-0, and my memory is it was a real defeat. They were never in the game. Malcolm MacDonald, Tommy Cassidy, John Tudor, and Mickey Burns scored the goals and sent the 4-0 into the almost to the top of the group. Well, at least tying the top of the group with the Mackhams, but we had a much better goal difference. So we got it on goals by the fact that we got this 4-0 win. Our team was unchanged from the previous two games. Middlesbrough team was Jim Platt, who Irish international goalkeeper for many years. John Craggs, of course, who's ex-Mackham. Bobby Murdoch, who they got from Celtic. Stuart Bohm, who stayed with us for a while before he went to Middlesbrough. Bill Madron. Bill Madron is a long servant of Middlesbrough and had big family connections, and they did a big charity thing for him because he died of Alzheimer's. I think that they did a big charity thing for Bill. Malcolm Smith, John Hickson. Hickson was a big bustling centre forward. Sort of character that would hit anything that moved. You know, he was like Billy Whitelaw was for us. And David Mills, who came to us eventually. He became a multi-million-pound player, but and eventually came to us and then went back to Middlesbrough. And David Armstrong. Not a bad team for Middlesbrough, but on that day, they didn't turn up, unfortunately. And crowd wasn't, as I say, wasn't brilliant for a match like that. So next we'll move into the league programme at long last. I mean, we're now into back end of August, where normally by then we would have had 3 or 4 league games played, but we're playing our first league game against Coventry City, and I think there might be a programme for that one, Steve. That's it, yeah. And well, I know in the Gallagher corner, the optimism was that we would win this without any effort, and of course we sorry, I've just dropped my magnifier. because we didn't, did we? Typical Newcastle, to get your hopes built up and think that, well, we'd wallop them last season. It's not going to be any different this season. Well, it didn't happen, unfortunately. It did in the sense, but at first it looked like we were going to be in trouble with Brian Alderson and Tommy Hutchison scoring for them, and lo and behold, we managed to turn it round with Alan Kennedy, Malcolm MacDonald, and Pat Howard scoring goals. Pat Howard, as a centre half or defender, had a knack of getting goals from corners. He was a nice big lad, but he was a good head of a ball and was dangerous at corners. Team was virtually unchanged. One change at right back because David Craig was injured, and Irvin Natras came into the team, and that was introduced another young Geordie into the team. Jimmy Smith came into the team, and otherwise the rest was the same: Cassidy, Matt McDonald, John Tudor, Terry Hibbert. Coventry had some characters in the team. Peter Hendley, the left fullback, was ex-Forest player, well thought of, clever player. Chris Catlin at centre back, very, very tough centre back, and Alan Dugdale was similarly an ex-West Brom player. And I had introduced the season before a little blonde lad, Scots lad called Willie Carr, who was a real terrier. And of course, they had also in their front line Tom Hutchison, who's had association with our neighbours down the road, and always a bit of a pain as far as the Magpies were concerned. Dennis Mortimer played in the front line and made quite a career with Manchester City at first, and Brian Alderson and Colin Steen was a West Indian centre forward who made his name in Coventry's cup win. So we got off to a start and with a bit of a fright, is all I'd say. And then we moved on to another home game very quickly with Sheffield United. Now I don't have a programme for that one, and 34,000 in the crowd. There was 35 for the Coventry match, by the way, which isn't bad, and 34,200 for the Sheffield United game. And we go in at half time, a goal down, thanks to Eddie with a penalty for Sheffield United, and then just after half time, Burns scores the equaliser for us, and then 64 minutes, Malcolm MacDonald puts us in the lead. And right on the final whistle, a lad called Spate, who played for Sheffield for a long, long time, got an equaliser. So we came out of that one with a 2-2 draw. And I was at the match, and I sensed the Gallagher corner wasn't entirely over the moon about that. They expected that we would win that game, but you can't win them all, as they say. But I know there was an expectation that we would probably win that one, and it didn't happen, unfortunately. So we now go to the next game, which is Wolves away, and we know this is going to be a tough game. Wolves always is a tough game, and that's the Wolves programme. That's great, thanks, Steve. And nobody's expecting a great deal out of this. 25,000 at the game at Molyneux, and we think, well, what will happen? Well, what happened was we weren't surprised when we lost. We lost 4-2. John Tudor scored both our goals, having given us an early lead. Everybody got all uptight about that, thought it was great. And then Terry Hibbert's brother, who played for Wolves, scored 4 goals, one after the other. 22 minutes, 25, 65, and 69. And then as a consolation, John Tudor got us the second one. So we lost that one 4-2. While we didn't expect to win it, I don't think. People were quite disappointed at the manner of the defeat. It seemed a bit lackluster, to put it mildly. And it stopped any progress we were making in the league, which was a worry from the previous season, because the previous season would struggle to stay in the middle of the table for any length of time. And as I say, that heavy defeat was a sort of a warning. We next go to another away game very quickly, a few days later on the Tuesday, to Sheffield United, and it's a game which, having beaten them well and truly at home, we think, well, should at least get a point out of this game. Well, we didn't. We got another defeat, I'm afraid, 2-1, and 27,000 at the game. Alan Kennedy give us the lead on 20 minutes, and everybody thinks, oh, well, here we go. But no, very quickly, Cormac and Bland score to give Sheffield the game. And after the second goal went in, our lot just seemed to fade away. We didn't come back in a way in which we thought we might. Again, as I say, I remember the feeling in the Gallagher corner the next time I went was that we weren't in a happy place in the league. In fact, we're in a dangerous place, because we're now below middle, and sliding was the worry, and it left a sort of a nervousness in the crowd in the Gallagher corner. And Sheffield team was our team was predictable. McFall, David Craig was back, Kennedy, McDermott, Keeley, Pat Howard, Mickey Burns, or Irvin Natras slipped into midfield because of an injury to Tommy Cassidy, and Malcolm MacDonald, John Tudor, and Terry Hibbert. The Sheffield team was a one that played for them for a long time. Eddie Cahoon was playing at centre back, and him and his brother played for Sheffield together for a long time. Len Badger, great name. Alan Woodward was a strong centre forward. Eventually played for England, and of course the star player was a midfielder called Tony Curry, blonde-haired lad, very clever, vicious shot, so that was a disappointment. Anyway, so the next match we come back to is a home game against West Ham United, and I think there might be a programme for that. Yeah, and there's a lot of hope that we more than anything that we're going to get a result out of this. Still, the crowd at this early part of the season are keeping faith, because the 31,000 turned up for this game, and they weren't disappointed. 5 minutes, John Tudor sets we going, and on 25 minutes, Malcolm MacDonald makes it 2-0, and that's the way it stayed till the end. And West Ham just weren't in the game after that. They seemed as though they hadn't turned up in a normal sense. Our team unchanged. McFall, Craig, and etc. and Malcolm MacDonald, Tudor, and Hibbert in the front line. As I say, 31,000, which not a bad crowd that. West Ham United introduced a new goalkeeper who became quite a highly regarded goalkeeper, Mervyn Day, to the team. Introduced a new defensive midfielder called Kevin Locke. Kevin Locke also got quite a name for himself. But the rest of the West Ham team was well known Billy Bonds, Frank Lampard Senior, Pat Holland, Graham Padden. Bobby Gould was introduced into the team. Now Bobby was to become famous not with West Ham but more with Wimbledon in the later years with the Crazy Gang as their manager, and Clyde Best, the West Indian left winger, who was always a very good player. They just appointed a new manager at West Ham, John Lyle, who's an ex-player who came back because their previous manager, Ron Greenwood, had been appointed to the England job and stayed with England for quite a while after that. So we got 2 points, and everybody was... I have to keep remind myself that it was only 2 points then.
2 points for a win, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It wasn't 3. Yeah, and anyway, it was a good win, and I remember the Gallagher Corner at least went away home quite happy. Our next game is an away game at Derby County, and always have interesting games at Derby County. Quite tough games, but usually good football games. And so there's some measure of apprehension. 22,000 at the game, and the Derby games, of course, for me personally for a family, as I've said on here before, with my father having his elder sister live in Derby, any chance that the Chicken Road Academy had to hire a bus and go to a match, they always used to go. The trouble is, my father used to take all 30 people on the bus to me Auntie Nan's and go for a cup of tea, which must have been quite something for the street where my Auntie Nan lived in Chaddeston and Derby. But I think she enjoyed it, and our family enjoyed it. So off they went to Derby anyway, with the hope that something might happen. And it was a good game. I remember them coming and saying how well they'd played. It was a 2-2 draw, and we went in at half time, thanks to Michael McDonald, 1-1, and Mel Davies then inside forward score equalised just before the whistle went. And then after half time, a lad called Lee put them in the lead, and Mickey Burns at 63 minutes equalised. So we come home with a very creditable 2-2 draw, which, as I say, it was pleasing because I think everybody appreciated how tough a place Derby was to go. Bear in mind that this team was a team that eventually was to become league champions. Just looking at the Derby team now with Peter Daniel, a Welsh international in a defence, David Nish, they got from Leicester, Colin Todd, of course, who they paid a fortune for from the Mackhams, Archie Gemmell, the well-known Scottish midfielder, Bruce Rioch, another Scotsman, Roger Davis, a centre forward, midfielder called Kevin Hector, very dangerous midfielder, scored a lot of goals. And of course, out on the left on that day, as I said, Lee scored. Well, the lead that scored was Francis Lee, who they'd bought from Manchester City. And the manager, of course, was Dave Mackay, the ex-Spurs captain, who as I say, eventually turned this team into a championship team. Our team, virtually unchanged, except that David Craig was injured and Irvin Natras went in to right back for us. Otherwise, the team was unchanged from the previous match. So it was good to get a draw at Derby. And the heave a sigh of relief a little bit in the Gallagher Corner because we're now sitting in about mid-table. The next match is an away match at Nottingham Forest, but it was a League Cup match, and League Cup second round, and well, we hope to make progress in the League Cup, and hope is all we get out of that competition most of the time. However, we Bowyer of playing for Forest puts them 1-0 in the lead at the 25,000 crowd. And on 58 minutes, Malcolm MacDonald turns it into 1-1, which is great. We hoping to make progress in the cup, but it means we've got a replay to face if with a 1-1, and anyway, we're not out of it, which for the League Cup is quite refreshing, because by now we're used to the notion that the League Cup's not for us. We're not going to do very well, and how things haven't changed very much since then.
Apart from this season.
yes, that's right. Of course, yeah, that's right. And the next game's a home game against Carlisle, who people might have forgotten were actually in the first division in those days. And 42,000 came out to watch Carlisle, which I think is a great tribute to Carlisle. Great tribute to our fans as well, of course. But I think there was a lot of curiosity in that. Plus, I got a distinct impression that people thought they were coming to see a goal fest at St James's Park because it was only Carlisle. Well, what a disappointment they had, because Carlisle fought like tigers. I remember this game. It was stupendous. And it looked like they were going to get a 0-0. I mean, there's no doubt about it. In the Gallagher corner, people had their hankies out wiping their brows of the sweat, because it bombarded the goal, did everything, hit every bit of woodwork, but could not get the winner. But then, lo and behold, just on 87 minutes, John Tudor comes in with one of his signature diving headers. You know, one of these headers where his nose is about an inch off the grass, and heads it amongst all of the feet in the penalty area to get the win. And as I say, that because we got the win, and what that does to a league position, you could feel a palpable sigh of relief in the Gallagher corner from people saying, "Oh God, that's good. That means we're a bit safer again for a bit longer." Our team unchanged: McFall, Natters, Clark, etc., and MacDonald, Tudor, Hibbett. Carlisle United had a fullback, Peter Carr, who was a ex Newcastle junior player, John Gorman, who I've mentioned before. Hugh McElmoy was still centre forward, and Chris Balderson in midfield. A mixture of youth and experience at Carlisle, but it served them well, because they very, very nearly got a 0-0 draw out of this match, and that would have really, really gone down very badly with the Gallagher corner, etc. We're now back to the quarter-final of the Texaco Cup, and we're playing Aberdeen. I think that there could be a programme for that. Yep, that's it. And, well, nobody's sure what to expect of this, because the Scottish team, we expect to win, because we don't regard them as strong as First Division, but it wasn't going to be like that. The 23,000 crowd, quite a good crowd, but it is the quarter-final after all. And on 22 minutes, Aberdeen scored to put the sweat on everybody. And then Malcolm MacDonald on 25 minutes equalises 1-1, and that's how it stayed until the end. And as I say, we anticipated that we might win this, but at Pataudry it wasn't great, but a big crowd for them, I suppose. They had one of the first Italian managers to manage in the Scottish League, Geraint Savratino was at Pataudry at the time. But they had an interesting team. Jim Clark was Scotland's goalkeeper. Joe Smith, the centre-half, and Willie Young were two, and Willie Miller were the centre-backs, very strong centre-back pairing. Arthur Graham and Ian Hay in the front line, and David Irvine, who was a Scottish winger as well. So not a bad team, but a team which we all thought we should have beaten. And Harvey is true to his word, plays the full squad. McFall, Natras, Clark, McDermott, and Keeley goes in, and Pat Howard, Mickey Burns, Jinky Jimmy Smith goes in because it's against his old team. Malcolm MacDonald, John Tudor, and Terry Hibbett. Again, games against Aberdeen have a big family thing for me, because a large chunk of my family at those days used to live in Aberdeen. So any opportunity to go up there, but with it being a midweek, there wasn't much chance to go and do that. But I mean, as when I was a kid, when I was a youngster, from I was about 6 years of age, my uncle George was, who I'm named after, worked as the manager of a paper mill after he came out of the RAF. Paper mill not far from Balmoral. Fantastic place for a kid to spend their summer holidays. It was wild. It was, there was lots to do. You could go fishing, and in those days, you could take me to play golf because there was no rules about club membership and that sort of thing. So Aberdeen was quite special for me. But the other thing is that before I came home after my 6 weeks holiday, the Scottish season had started. So I used to see at least 3 or 4 Aberdeen games. So I seen the big teams like Celtic, Rangers, and Hearts, and Hibs, Hamilton Academicals, Adrionians. Seen them all at Pataudry when I was on my summer holidays, and so Aberdeen was quite special. So there's a little bit of me wasn't too sad that we ended up drawing 1-1, but on the other hand, it didn't look very nice on the face of things. We came home to a home match against QPR. I think there should be a programme for that, Steve.
No, not that one, no.
No. Well, everybody's hoping that QPR aren't playing particularly well. 18,000. Sorry, it's an away match. It's not a home match. It's an away match at Queen's Park. 18,000 at the game. And we go in at half time 0-0, which that's it. Yeah, thanks, Steve. And we're worried about that because, as I say, that they're well below us in the league and hanging on by their fingernails to the league for the past 2 seasons. So eventually, things start to happen, but it happens in a most unfortunate way. Young Glenn Keeley was centre half, heads the ball into his own net from a QPR corner, which looks like we're in for a disaster. But thanks to our faithful goal scorers, Mickey Burns and John Tudor, in the 63rd and 64th minute, we got 2 goals, so we can take a 2-1 win home. Which would have been welcome at the start, but the trepidation, a little bit of trepidation because of the going down to an own goal. Everybody thought, well, this is not going to go well. So we then come home for the replay in the League Cup to Nottingham Forest, and we hoping that we might make progress, and lo and behold, with a 27,000 crowd, make progress, we do. And I've just realised I didn't mention the QPR team. Our team was unchanged. There were 1 or 2. Phil Parks, the goalkeeper, but I think I've already mentioned that Stan Bowles was a character. And on the left side, they had Don Givens, who they'd just bought from Manchester United, and of course Jerry Francis was in the team as well. So, and QPR is an interesting team. So we'll come back home to this replay with Forest, and hoping above hope that we pull our socks up. And lo and behold, we do. 2-0 at half time with Malcolm MacDonald scoring the first one on 23 minutes, and then Glenn Keely making up for his own goal at QPR, heading in from a corner for us on 24 minutes. And so we're sailing quite nicely into the next round of the League Cup. And just to put the tin hat on it, as it were, Mickey Burns on 89 minutes makes it 3-0. So we advance into the next round of the League Cup with a good 3-0 win. The team's almost unchanged from from meeting them at Forest in the first game. They had one addition. They had bought a fullback from Arsenal called Viv Anderson, who many would say was the first black player to play for England, right fullback. Very speedy player, but did good service for Arsenal and for Nottingham Forest. And of course, by the time they'd come for this replay, they had just appointed a new manager, whose name was Alan Brown, which was a name that we know quite well up here from managing our near neighbours for quite a long time. So we got through to the next round of the League Cup, and the next game is a home game against Ipswich. And I don't have a programme for that, I don't think. The big feeling in the Gallagher corner is that we're going the right direction now, where we're above mid-table and we're not hanging on with our fingernails as we were the previous season. So, and Ipswich is a good side, but lo and behold, but it's something of a reflection on how good people think we are when there's 45,000 come to this game, which is quite something for a game with Ipswich. And it looks like it's going to go into an entertaining goalless draw. But then, out of nowhere, Malcolm MacDonald does one of his usual things, picks the ball up just in mid of their half, runs to the edge of the penalty area, and bang, it's in the top right-hand corner before the goalkeeper can even look for it. A superb goal, and we get a 1-0 win. And that really does cheer the Gallagher corner up, and you know, they're all breathing a sigh of relief and thinking about, well, going up rather than going down. And our team unchanged virtually. Well, it is unchanged. Natras, Clark, McDermott, etc., and the forward line with Malcolm MacDonald, John Tudor, Terry Hibbert. Tommy Gibb comes into midfield because there's an injury to Tommy Cassidy. Ipswich have an interesting side with one or two characters. Bobby Robson, the manager, of course, and by now they've got George Burley, a Scottish fullback, as their right back, who made a name of himself as a manager for a couple of clubs, but unfortunately didn't stick with it. Mick Mills, the England left back, was playing, and then a young midfielder, defensive midfielder called Brian Talbot, who became a great character. And Kevin Beattie, another England defender who played for them. Brian Hamilton, right winger for Northern Ireland for many years, and as I've mentioned on a previous occasion, Dave Johnson, who they got from Nottingham Forest, whose son now plays for Nottingham Forest in the Premiership. Trevor Wymark, a very clever centre forward or number 10. He could play either. And Clive Woods, a very tricky winner. So that was a good win for us, and again, it just kept the wheels turning in the right direction. The next game is the return leg of the Texaco Cup quarter final against Aberdeen, and so we need to win this by more than one goal, because it's on aggregate scores, and we go in at 1-1 at half time. Aberdeen frightened the life out of everybody in the Gallagher corner by taking the lead. And then Malcolm MacDonald and Terry Hibbert scored 2 just after half time to put win the lead. Then Aberdeen get an equaliser. Now, just before the final whistle, Malcolm MacDonald, of course, his second and our third, and we win 3-2 to take the tie on aggregate 4-3. And everybody's delighted now that we're in the semi-final of the Texaco Cup. Our team, very predictable, as Joe Harvey always was, I'm afraid. 19,000 at the game, which is not bad for a Texaco Cup match. Slight differences is that the fullback pairing is Irvin Atlas and Alan Kennedy, and you're so used to Craig and Clark. To see 2 new names there was a bit odd, but otherwise the team was unchanged. Aberdeen, who come with the Italian manager, with a similar team to the first match. In fact, exactly the same team as the first match, and give a good account of themselves. I mean, 3-2 is no disgrace. It's St James's for any team, but for a Scottish teams, it's a good. Now, as it happens, my uncle in Aberdeen, who I've just told you about in the first match, he decided to take a week's holiday and came and stayed with my grandmother at Chicken Road for a week's holiday, and then it meant he could go to the match with the lads, with his brothers, and my father, and so on. And it was nice, a nice family occasion. His loyalties, of course, are torn because he lived in Aberdeen, but at the back of him was still a black and he was still a black and white, though he still was a black and white. Well, as I say, it was a great family occasion as well as a good football match. We then have an away game at Everton, and again, a tough game. Don't really get any easy games at Everton. Didn't then, and we don't now. And we 41,000 at the game. So the Toffee fans obviously like seeing the Magpies go their way, and we get off to a reasonably good start. In a half an hour, Terry McDermott slots in a nice drive from just at the edge of the penalty area, and it looks all right until just on the hour, and their midfielder called Buckley, a clever little midfielder, scored an equaliser. And then from then on, I'm afraid, as far as Newcastle was concerned, it was backs to the wall. Everton did everything but score a winner, thank goodness for us. And we hung on quite nicely to till the end of the game. Our team is as red as they say: McFall, Natras, Kennedy, McDermott, Keeley, Pat Howard, Mickey Burns, Tommy Gibb, MacDonald, John Tudor, and Terry Hibbert. Everton, of course, have their own characters in the team. The fullback Mick Lyons was a great character. Roger Kenyon, Mike Bernard at the midfielder, strong midfielder. Mick Buckley, I've mentioned already, and Martin Dobson, John Connolly, a winger that they got from Manchester United, and then Jim Pearson, who's a Scottish midfielder, who a few years later we were expressing an interest in because he was quite a clever midfielder. And Bob Latchford was a centre forward, a big bustling centre forward who played for England. So a very creditable one, as people would say, to come away from Everton with 1-1. And we're now heading towards the third round of the League Cup against QPR, and it's an away match. And having had a tough league match there, people were wondering what was going to happen to in this match. But in fact, they didn't need to worry, because they just turned it on, as they say. It was one of those matches which Malcolm MacDonald was unplayable. Malcolm scored a hat-trick, 4 minutes, 24 minutes, in 83 minutes, and Terry Hibbert scored a one in 75 minutes. And it really was... John Tudor scored the fourth one. And the 16,000 at the game, those of them that were Magpies and must have enjoyed the game, because, as I say, Malcolm MacDonald was in one of those days when he just was untouchable, just so quick and strong that they couldn't shift him off the ball. So a great win. Our team, predictable, McFall, Natras, Kennedy, etc. And their team had their usual characters in it. Phil Parkes in goal. Terry Mancini came in at centre-back for this match, and they got Terry Mancini from Chelsea. And he was to stay with QPR for the rest of his career. And of course, Stan Bowles was and Jerry Francis was in the forward line. Dave Thomas played on the right side of the forward line. They just bought him from Burnley. He was a Geordie that went to Burnley, but he ended up at QPR. But he played for England a few times, I think, towards the end of his career. So we're through the League Cup, and we'll go back now to a home match against Stoke City. And everybody wants a win, of course, because we're hoping to keep going in the right direction. And everybody's 39,600 at the match, which is a good crowd for Stoke. But that reflects on the wins that we've been having away and prior to this. And get off to a flyer. Glenn Keeley heads from a corner, heads in the lead at 4 minutes. And Salmons, a Stoke centre forward, scores an equaliser on 26. And John Tudor puts a back lead on 31 minutes. And it looks like we're going to get a 2-1 win. But right at the end, 87 minutes, Mahoney for Stoke scores the equaliser. So we get a 2-2 draw. But in terms of the league position, that was quite acceptable, because it meant we're still not sliding down, rather than which is the worry that people had at that time, as we got out of this bad run of results. At least we felt as though we had. Stoke, fairly strong team at the time. John Farmer, the goalkeeper, was a character. Dennis Smith, of course, who was playing at right back that day, ended up playing for and managing the Mackhams for a while. Jeff Salmons, who scored one of the goals, and John Mahoney, two dangerous wingers. Centre forward, of course, somebody we've already talked about on the previous programme, Steve, was Alan Hudson, who they brought from Chelsea, and playing alongside Jeff Hurst, who they got from West Ham, and Jimmy Greenhoff, who they got from Leeds. So a good group of footballers, to put it mildly, is playing for Stoke. So to get a creditable draw was acceptable. And we're not long before we've got another home game. On the Wednesday, we'll come to a home match against Wolves, and everybody's hoping that, well, we've turned things round a bit, and 32,000 for a midweek's not a bad crowd in those days, and it's a decent match. It's a match I can remember because the weather was atrocious, and St James's was its usual quagmire when the weather was like that, but it wasn't good for football, but it was exciting because it was end to end. The ball was skidding about all over the place, and it ended up being a very entertaining 0-0, which we relieved not to lose is the important thing as far as we're concerned. So we now go away to Birmingham City. Oh, I didn't talk about the Wolves team there. It's interesting that they had one or two characters in it. Kenny Hibbert, of course, who's the brother of our Hibbert, Mike Bailey, Alan Sunderland, who became famous for scoring a winning goal at Wembley in a cup final. And of course, the centre forward in this match was none other than Peter With, who we knew very well from St James's Park. But it's still a good draw against Wolves. But it was a horrible night. So the next game's an away game at Birmingham City, and everybody's hoping that we'll turn the form around. Let's see. No, there's no program for this one, Steve. That's the next game. How many times have I sat here and said we're playing Birmingham City, and then the next game we're playing Birmingham City? There's something about that. It's something in the way they draw these things out, I think. Never mind. It's an away game, and we hope we'll get a draw. Well, we don't get a draw. We'll get an absolute 35,000 at the game. And we'll lose 3-0. It was 2-0 at half time. And my memory of the reports of the game were that we were lucky to get away with 3. We really did get a run around at Birmingham at St Andrews that day. So puts a dent in our confidence in the league. But however, there's time to recover. We're not in desperate straits yet. But the Birmingham side is the one that, as I've mentioned before, Dave Latchford in goal, Gary Pendry, centre-back, Joe Gallagher, Kenny Burns, a Scottish midfielder, tough little lad. Howard Kendall was in the midfield then, and Trevor Francis, the very tricky, very expensive young man introduced into football. Now, the next match is the programme, one that you flashed up because it's...
No, I'm not showing it now, George. 2 seconds.
It's the Texaco Cup. Well, people just wonder, we just had a real run around by Birmingham in the Texaco Cup. And even though this is at home, this is at St James's Park, people, concerned as to how we'll react to it. 20-odd thousand at the game, and we go in at half time, 1-0 down, and thanks to a Trevor Francis goal, and then our talisman Michael McDonald, just when we needed him, 80 minutes, bang, 1-1. So we get a 1-1 result out of this leg when we thought we were going to get possibly get a defeat. Not read the teams because they were almost identical to the teams. Well, they were identical to the teams that played in the league match. So all them lads would be on first name terms the number of times they played each other. It's just incredible. The number of times I've sat here and said, and we're playing Birmingham City, and we're playing Birmingham City. And never mind. So then we're moving on to a home game with Leicester City. And really after some of the results we've had, I know the Gallagher Corner's hoping to get a result out of this. 35,000 at the game, and unfortunately, the result isn't what we wanted, because Leicester win 1-0. We just couldn't. You could, if you know how they add up possession these days. I'm sure if you did it in this match, it could have been 75-25 to us against Leicester, but Leicester were better organised. Once they got in the lead, there was no way they were going to let that lead go. And despite all the efforts of Malcolm MacDonald, John Tudor, and Peter Shilton, their goalkeeper, the England goalkeeper, played out of his skin and had a fantastic game. And all the stars like Worthington and Steve Earle and Keith Weller, and Mike Summerby, all fought like Billy O to save these 3 points, and they got them. Leicester had just before this match appointed Jimmy Bloomfield as the manager. Very clever player when he played, but it turned out to be quite a clever manager for a short while, but not for very long. So we lose that one, much to the disappointment of the Gallagher Corner. And we're next to receive Luton Town is the next one. Now, I don't think there's a programme for Luton Town. In fact, there's not. Luton Town are fresh to the First Division, but not playing too badly. They're above us in the league, so a win would do us good. 31,000 at the game on a Saturday afternoon, 3 o'clock, as they usually were in those days. And but Luton looked like they were going to hang on for that one of Dave's programmes.
Yeah.
Good, no, thanks very much. That's Luton Town were hanging on despite all the efforts of Supermark and John Tudor and all the rest. But on 80 minutes, John Tudor, again, another one of his diving headers. I don't know how he used to get away with it. With his nose about 2 inches off the grass, in amongst all the feet, bang, into the back of the net. And I sometimes used to wonder how he escaped all the boots in the penalty area. I don't know, but he did manage, and we got away with a decent 1-0 win, much to the relief of Gallagher Corner. Our team unchanged from previous matches. McFall and Atras. In the front line was Malcolm MacDonald, John Tudor, Terry Hibbert, etc. Luton Town, the manager was a man called Harry Haslam, who's once for a long time touted as a possible England manager, but he didn't get that. He stayed with Luton for quite a lot of years, but tragically died as very young of cancer, poor soul. And Luton had a decent team, but tended to be made up of players who had careers elsewhere, usually in London. Like their goalkeeper was Keith Barber, who was at Chelsea. Don Shanks, who was a QPR player. Brian Chambers, who was Everton, but was a Geordie. Brian Chambers was at Newcastle as a schoolboy. He played for Newcastle schoolboys, but went south. He didn't play for Newcastle. And then one name which hits you in the face if you're ever in this part of the world is Gordon Heinsohn, who was a Newcastle junior, who was transferred by Harvey to QPR. And Alan West was a dangerous forward they got from Everton, and John Aston was a dangerous winger that they got from Manchester United. So they had a decent team made up of players that made their careers elsewhere, but they nearly got a draw out of this particular game. It wasn't easy for them. So that was the Luton League game. Then we come to Birmingham City again. It's the second leg of the Texaco Cup, and we need a decent win to make progress. And we haven't had a bad time. The last time we visited St Andrews, to say that people are on tenterhooks is putting it mildly. We go in at half time 1-0 up, thanks to an Alan Kennedy goal, and then we go bananas. Natris, McDonald, Tudor, and we're 4-0 up. And then just before the end, Kenny Burns gets a consolation for them. So we come away from St Andrews with a 4-1 win, which was a very pleasant surprise for everybody. Because as I said, the last time we went in the league, we got beat 3-0 and they give us a real runaround. So that we advance in the Texaco Cup. The next game is a home game, an away game at Middlesbrough. And we go to Ayrsham. 38,000 people in the crowd. That's another one of David's by the look of it. Or is that mine?
No, that's David's. Yep.
That's Dave's. Yeah.
You can tell by the wonderful.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Good. Well, I thank him for that. That just adds to it a little bit. This is another one which is a family thing for me. As you know, Steve, I had family that lived in Teesside. My uncle was moved to Shipyard at Haverton Hill and was given a new house in Billingham, where we used to go regularly as a family. But especially when there was a match on, we all used to trot off and have a good weekend. Some went to the football, and one of my cousins went to a massage parlour in Middlesbrough, but the least said about that, the better. But as far as the rest of the family was concerned, he was at the match with us. He always managed to pick up on our way back from the game. Anyway, we went in. It was a tough game, but we came away with a very creditable 0-0, which was as I say, a nice relief for us. Middlesbrough are hard to beat at Ayrsham, and they weren't a bad side. I mean, some stars in that team like Jim Platt, goalkeeper. John Craggs, of course, an ex-Magpie. Judd Bourne, ex-Magpie. Willie Madron. Frank Spraggan, who was a long-term player. Bobby Murdoch, Graham Souness. And then they had just bought a winger from Newcastle United called Alan Foggan, who played in our Fairs Cup squad. David Armstrong, Alan Hickson, and David Mills, who as I said earlier, came to us at one stage in his career. Our team, very, very predictable, except that on the right side of the forward line, Stuart Barraclough was brought back in because there'd been some injuries, and but it was a 0-0 draw, which could have gone either way because it was end to end. It wasn't a really bad, boring 0-0 draw. It was quite exciting. You know, we go to the League Cup fourth round at home to Fulham. I think that there's a programme for that, and well, we're hoping because Fulham aren't that strong at this particular time. 24,000 at the game, and sure enough, having struggled at up to half time, we went in 0-0, and immediately after half time, Malcolm MacDonald slotted 2 in, and Tommy Cassidy's got the third, and we came away with a 3-0 win, which was a great relief to the Gallagher corner. And we're making progress in the League Cup again, and we need to look at the Fulham team. Our team, McFall, Natras, Frank Clark, etc., and the Fulham team now is managed by a man called Alex Stock. Alex Stock was one of the assistant managers for Arsenal for many years. highly regarded as a coach, and he ended up being the manager at Fulham for a while. I think he went back to QPR for a bit as well. With the Fulham team made up of a mixture of young players and players who had their careers mostly at the big clubs in London, like Alan Mullery, who made his name at Spurs, really. Ernie Howe, who was a relative of Don Howe, the international fullback, and Bobby Moore, who was on his way down from West Ham, played for a while with Fulham. Alan Slough, they got from Arsenal, and Les Barrett, a left-sided attacker, and who was a very dangerous player, but this is a twilight of his career. But then they introduced a young centre forward called Vivian Busby, who eventually came to Newcastle United. Now, I may be wrong, but I used to like Viv Busby. He was a lively character on the pitch and quite an intelligent player in my view. But we came away with a 3-0 win. That was the important thing. Now we go home to a home match against Chelsea. Now this is always a tough game. That they're never going to make things easy for us. And this crowd reflects that, 38,000. And Malcolm MacDonald has one of those days again where he just was unplayable. Everything he touched came to a goal, if not for him, but for somebody else. The first half, though, but nobody could get near the goal. It was 0-0, and only because of the Chelsea goalkeepers playing out of his skin. But after half time, 50 minutes, 70 minutes, 75 minutes, 80 minutes, and 83 minutes, Cadell, Kennedy, MacDonald, and Barrowclough, and we beat Chelsea 5-0. Well, people were absolutely cock-a-hoop about that. You can imagine beating Chelsea because they weren't a bad team at that time. And people in the Gallagher corner certainly were wondering, well, what's happened here? Have they had a row off the pitch or something? Because they didn't seem to want to know each other. And you just need to look at the names in that team. Goalkeeper was Peter Bonetti, the England goalkeeper. Gary Locke, Chopper Harris, David Hay, Charlie Cook, Charlie Cook from Aberdeen for one of the biggest fees in history, Peter Houseman, Steve Kember, a whacking great fee from Crystal Palace, Bill Garner and Chris Garland, another big fee signing for Chelsea. Whatever happened to them that day, they just didn't turn up and got the shellacking that they deserved, which was quite nice for us, but very disappointing for the pensioners fans. The next game's an away game at Burnley, and we know that this is going to be tough. It's not going to be
Is it a away game or a home game?
Yes.
I've got a home programme. Is this just to show the teams?
Just to show the teams, yes, because the teams were nearly the same. Yeah. It's away to Turf Moor, and we know the games against Burnley are always quite tough. 20,000 at the game, which is big for Burnley, and we're just not in the game. James scores with a penalty, and then Noble scores a hat-trick, 4-0. Then right on the stroke of final whistle, Stuart Barrowclough gets us a consolation. So we get beat 4-1, which is not where we weren't expecting to win outright. I don't think anybody was expecting that sort of defeat. So that didn't go down very well in the Gallagher corner, and just I mean, and with no excuses, because this is the same team. We haven't got injuries. It's exactly the same team as we've been playing all season, except that Paul Canals come in because there was an injury to Tommy Cassidy. But the Burnley team, which is now managed by Jimmy Adamson from Ashington manager, Alan Stevenson, who was a Geordie, Keith Newton, a Geordie, Ian Brown, a Geordie. Leighton James was a winger, wide player from Wales who was like Grease Lightning, really like Grease Lightning. Peter Noble, rather, who we get to know in another guise. Of course, he comes to us eventually. Ray Hankin, who was from Wallsend, from where I live, Wallsend Boys Club player, in fact, from years ago, and Paul Fletcher was another Geordie. So it's nearly a Geordie team against it, and gives her a real run around. And well, one of those things that, as I say, people weren't expecting to win, but they were hoping to do a bit better than that. And so we're now heading towards the final of the Texaco Cup, which is Southampton away is the first leg, and it's our cup. We want to retain it, and I'm sure that's how the players took it. 20,000 at the game at the Dell, and unfortunately, a young man by the name of Mick Shannon, who was well known as an international player and eventually came to us at the twilight of his career, gets them an early goal, and that's the way it stays to the final whistle. We get a 1-0 defeat, my memory of the reports was we were lucky to get away with a 1-0 defeat because they outplayed us. And our manager was a man called Laurie McNamee, which is it was well known up here as well, of course. In their team, there are a number of characters who became well known. Bobby Stokes, as I say, who scored an important cup final goal. Mick Shannon, David Peach, Jerry O'Brien, all well-known players who give good service to Southampton and to football in general. But we got a 1-0 defeat. But a lot of people think that we were lucky to get away with a 1-0 defeat. So we're now coming home to a home match against Manchester City, and we know this traditionally always going to be a tough game. They crowd 38,000, which tells you a lot. We looking for a good start, and lo and behold, Pat Howard scores a beautiful header from a corner on 20 minutes. So everybody's on high door because it looks like we're in for a treat. But lo and behold, 22 minutes, and a midfielder called Rodney Marsh does one of these wizard of the dribble sort of goals and beats everybody on the pitch and slots it in to make it 1-1 at half time, and makes the 38,000 St James's Park quiet. And people think, well, what's going to happen now? Are we going to make it? But as usual, when you want somebody to come out of the woodwork and do something for you, Malcolm MacDonald seemed to manage it time and again. And on 80 minutes, just before the end, 10 minutes from the end, he scores the winner, and we get a 2-1 win. Much to the relief, as I say, of the Gallagher corner. Everybody's delighted with that. And it was an entertaining game. It was the one I was actually at, and I can remember quite well enjoying the game. Our team unchanged, except that David Craig was back again at right full-back. Manchester City, all the characters in playing: Colin Bell, Mike Doyle, Willie Donaghy, Alan Oakes, Paul Henderson, Ray Harf, Asa Hartford rather, Dennis Stewart, who we know from various points of view, Barney Daniels and Rodney Marsh. A good, strong team. And I think, as I said on the last programme, the Mike Doyle that I mentioned, it was his grandson who scored the goal for Sheffield United to equalise against Blackburn in the cup the other week, a week or so ago, and a fantastic goal it was as well. So we're now that's an important win for us because it stops the slide. We've been slipping quite badly, and we now go to the League Cup 5th round and play Chester City. I think there's a programme for that, and we're hoping that this will result in a win for us. Well, we really shouldn't look too far. 22,000 crowd, and it's a 0-0 draw. It's a backs to the wall game from Chester. Just pack their defence. The goalkeeper plays out of his skin, and there's nothing we can do to score a goal. We're a full team. Joe Harvey never weakens the players, weakened teams. It's always a full team, and as I say, 32,000 rather at the game for Chester, which is something. And the Chester team is made mostly of players who've had good careers, but with other clubs. Trevor Staunton, for example, Reg Matheson from Sheffield United, and Stuart Mason from Sheffield United. Norman Whitehead, who they got from Manchester United. He was a great character for Ireland. And Ian Seddon, who played for Preston when Preston was a team, and John James, another Welshman who was quite a speedy. But they were all players who had made their names at a higher level. But they dug their heels in and fought like tigers to get that draw, and went away with a very creditable 0-0. We're then away to Spurs, and we know without thinking about it, this is going to be a stiff test for her, and stiff it is. Spurs scored 2 goals early on for an own goal by one of our fullbacks, Craig, and then a Martin Chivers goal, and then just on half time, fullback Knowles made it 3-0. So Spurs are cruising. Only 23,000 at the game, which is surprising at White Hart Lane. But never mind that at half time they're 3-0 up. Second half we come out and have a go, but all that does is preserves the little bit. We never look like we're going to score, and so it's not a happy day for us. It's another defeat, which starts us sliding below mid-table again and gets the Gallagher corner quite nervous. We now got the second leg of the Texaco Cup, and back against Southampton. Yeah, and it's in our own hands. We're only 1-0 down, and it's an aggregate score that wins it. And we want to try and retain this cup. Actually, going back to the Tottenham game, I'm looking at the Tottenham side, and no, that was I'm trying. They brought some new players. Oh, Martin Chivers, who they just bought from Southampton, was in their side. That was a big change for them. Anyway, we're now at home, as I say, to Southampton in this Texaco Cup final second leg, and our team's unchanged. There's a substitution because John Tudor gets injured and Ray Hudson comes on, one of our younger players, to just get a contract, and we only 19,500 at this game, which is for a final is a bit disappointing. But anyway, Laurie McMenemy brings his team to St James's with the usual characters in it. Jim Steele, good strong Scotsman. Mick Shannon, Jerry O'Brien, and by now, from the last match, they've actually bought Peter Osgood from Chelsea, so he's a danger that we didn't have to face in the first game. But matterless, we beat them 3-0 and win 3-1 on aggregate, and the goal scorers are Tudor. Alex Bruce comes on as a substitute, the lad we bought from Preston, and Paul Cannell scores a goal as well. So it's a Newcastle United retaining the Texaco Cup. And I've got to say, when I started to do this, I had forgotten that we didn't just win it once. We actually retained it. I suppose that reflects on what people think about the Texaco Cup as a competition more than anything. Anyway, we win the Texaco Cup. We come back to an away game against Coventry City, an away game we really would like to get something out of. And Coventry aren't that good. They're not knocking doors out of windows, but 16,000 at the game. But we just couldn't do it. Cross and Lloyd scored 2 goals for them before half time, and that's how it stayed until the final whistle. And it was almost as though we weren't on the we never hardly had a shot at goal. It really was a we didn't get thumped, but we didn't seem as though we tried either. It was quite a disappointing defeat in that sense. And the Coventry team was very like the one that we played earlier, except they'd bought Larry Lloyd from Liverpool to add to their team, and David Cross from Leicester joined their attack alongside Tommy Hutchinson and Alan Green that they bought from Leicester as well. So 2-0 defeat at Coventry was quite disappointing, but more importantly, it sent us in the wrong direction in the league, and people start to get a bit of a sweat on. Next, we go to the League Cup 5th round replay at Chester City. And, well, you know, Chester City, who are there, will give them a real shellacking at St James's. Is there a programme there for this, Steve? Chester City away? That's it, yep. And everybody's anticipating that we'll go there and marmalise them. Well, we don't. Yeah, it doesn't pay to get excited with Newcastle. 19,000 at the game, and it's 0-0, and everybody thinks, oh God, it's going to be another replay, or extra time at least. But in those days, it was a replay. You went on until you won. And unfortunately, on 75 minutes, one of their strikers, a kid called James, scored on 75 minutes, and that was the end of the League Cup. So we come back with our tails between our legs to face what was waiting for in the league. And we came home to a home match against none other than Leeds United. The Chester team, incidentally, was identical to the one that we'd played in the first game. And my memory is from the reports is that Norman Whitehead, the ex-Manchester United lad, was really on his form and give our defence a real run around that day. So we're coming back to a home game against Leeds United, as I say, and well, having lost to Chester, people on the Gallagher corner certainly are thinking, well, how on earth we're going to survive against a very strong Leeds team, and lo and behold, typical Newcastle, having struggled against Chester, they came home to a Leeds team, and first half 0-0, end-to-end stuff with the strong Leeds side, and then just to set things off, Alan Kennedy slots in a goal from the edge of the area. John Tudor then scores a header from a corner, and just on the final whistle, Pat Howard scores another goal from a corner, and we win 3-0 to before a 35,000 crowd. And the Gallagher corner was cock a hoop. I mean, A, the cock a hoop because we won 3-0, but B, because it's Leeds. The beating Leeds is I don't know. Well, I don't know why, because rivalry between us and Leeds has always been strong, and I know the Gallagher corner got a great deal of kudos out of the notion that we'd beaten Leeds, and this is a strong Leeds team. I mean, who are managed this time by Jimmy Armfield, the ex-England fullback, Blackpool player, David Harvey, Paul Reaney, Trevor Cherry, England player, Billy Bremner, Scotland, Gordon McQueen, Scotland. Gordon McQueen, whose daughter's on Sky presenting the sports programmes, Paul Madeley, Duncan McKenzie, who they paid a fortune for from Nottingham Forest, Alan Clark, Sniffer Clark, because he always had a reputation of sniffing out goals, dangerous player, Joe Jordan, ex-Manchester United, and Terry Yorith, who's also got a daughter who presents sport on television, and Peter Lorimer, a wide player, with one of the hardest shots in the game. Peter Lorimer, I don't know if they'd ever measured the speed of his shots, but had a reputation for one of the hardest shots in the game. So that's taken me back up the league a little bit, 35,000 with them. And we then have the return leg at Carlisle, a return match at Carlisle, which everybody's hoping we get a win to take up the league a little bit. 21,000 at Carlisle, which is a big crowd for them. And just to put the Geordies in a bit of a sweat, Carlisle score first, but then Tudor and MacDonald put things right, and we come away with a 2-1 win, which pushes us up the league again and takes the pressure off a bit, and we're now sort of sitting nicely at the in mid-table. Our team unchanged: McFall, Natras, Kennedy, Keeley, Howard, Barraclough. Jeff Nutley slipped in because of injuries to others. MacDonald, Tudor, and Tommy Craig, the lad we bought from Sheffield Wednesday, on the left side. So a decent win, and as I say, taking a bit of the pressure off in the league, because people have now got a sweat on about that. And next we go to an FA Cup third round at Manchester City, and we another tough place to go. We know this is going to be a tough game, but everybody's hoping that we have a cup run. 38,000 at the match, so City fans are expecting a good game as well. And we not expecting a huge victory, but we come away with a 2-0 victory, and it wasn't easy, but it wasn't hard either. We just didn't let Manchester City into the game, even though we're at Main Road, and the goal scorers were Mickey Burns and Jeff Nutley, who would just come to her from Burnley, and otherwise the team was its usual self. Manchester City had the big stars in Joe Corrigan in goal, Colin Bell, Mike Doll, Willie Donaghy, Alan Oakes, Mickey Horswell, who they'd bought from Sunderland, Peter Barnes, classical winger, dribbler and hard shot, Asa Hartford, Dennis Stewart and Rodney Marsh. So it's a strong City team. And Newcastle managed to make them look very ordinary in this cup match. So then we're home to Spurs, and full of confidence now of having won a cup match. 39,500 at the match against Spurs, and we, as I say, everybody's confident something's gonna happen. It could be something special. Well, it was special, but not for us. It was for Spurs. We were 4-0 down by half time. So to say that the Gallagher corner was moaning is putting it mildly. They just Spurs just turned it on and made it look very, very ordinary. And as I say, 4-0 up by half time. After half time, add salt into the wound that added a fifth. It looked like we're going to get a real pacing, but Burns and Tommy Craig added 2 consolation goals towards the end, and we ended up with a 5-2. We really, to say that that was disappointing. My memory of that game was in the Gallagher corner is that that's the first time I'd heard the crowd having a go at Joe Harvey. There were boos in the crowd at half time, obviously 4-0 down, but there were also 1 or 2 people starting to chant Harvey out, which interestingly caused all sorts of disturbance, because there was people in the Gallagher corner saying, "Well, how man? He's not done that bad for the last 10 years. This is only one game, you know." And that argument got the fisticuffs really for some people, but it was a hammering. There's no question about it. I mean, 5-2 at home is desperate under any situation. But as I say, the very first time that I remember there being boos directed, not just at the team, but at Joe Harvey as well. And the next match is at Manchester City, is away game. And, we've just beaten them in the FA Cup 3rd round. So what we've got to worry about? Well, what we've got to worry about is we've got a hangover from the Spurs game, because we'll go and get beat 5-1 at Manchester City. It was 2-1 at half time. And ironically, Malcolm MacDonald had put one in front. But then Dennis Stewart scored a hat-trick and Bell scored 2. And they went out 5-1 winners with a 33,000 at the game. And, to say that was not taken very well at the Gallagher corner. Manchester City team was almost, it was identical to the team which just knocked out the cup just a couple of weeks beforehand. But Matters, they reversed it well and truly, to say the least. So home we come to the next to Manchester City, and then we go into the 4th round of the FA Cup against Walsall. It's at Walsall, so everybody thinks, well, there's a good chance to go forward. 20,000 in the crowd at Walsall, and I'd say without contradiction, I went to this away game, this cup tie, and it's the worst away trip I've ever been on, by a mile. From the minute we got on the bus till the minute we got off, it was an awful day. And that was without the football. Without the football. My brother-in-law, Jim Rennie, worked in the North Tyneside Council, and they had a supporters group that used to organise matches away, and they used to get Priory Bus Company to organise the tickets. Well, Priory Bus Company ordered tickets, but more than they thought they could sell. So the ticket at the end, they were desperate to get rid of tickets. So my brother-in-law said to me, well, why don't we go? There's tickets go, we might as well go. So we went and we got there and we got on the bus. The minute we got on the bus, the driver was complaining, don't do this, don't do that. I'm not stopping here and don't ask us to do this. And, I looked at Jim and I thought, no, is this a good idea? Well, it wasn't. It was bloody awful. He moaned all the way down. He wouldn't stop for the lads, to the point where just as we were getting into the town of Walsall, some of the lads were peeing in bottles just to relieve themselves. It was just awful. Got into the ground, and at that time, Walsall's little ground was out of the arc. The stand behind the goal where we were standing on old railway sleepers that were rotten. So the sleepers were breaking because they'd never had that many people in the ground before for a long time. And we were sinking into the mud. So by half time, we were standing ankle deep in mud and getting pushed around like they do with a big crowd. It just to add pain to the whole thing, of course, is that Glen Keely, the pitch was quagmire. It was just mud. So it wasn't going to be a football game. It was going to be who made the fewest mistakes. Well, unfortunately, the ball stuck in the mud and Glen Keely stood on it and fell on his backside, and the Walsall centre forward slammed it in the back of the net. So from then on, it was the backs to the wall thing, and there was no way we were going to win that match. Then just before the end of the game, 10 minutes before the end, there was a big push at our end, and the back wall of the stand fell out, and we ended up on the ground behind the stand on a bloody railway line. You know, fell out of the ground onto a railway line and had to be rescued by the police and ushered away. They stopped the game for a little bit, but there was no way were we going back in. We just went to the bus, and we got on the bus and waited for the others coming. With this driver still moaning about, tell them to hurry up because I'm going to go, and all this sort of thing. And by then the mud was starting to dry on our shoes and our trousers, and were really miserable. The result of the match by then didn't matter. We were so desperate to get home. Anyway, it was a 1-0 win, and what a miserable win. It was a terrible, worst away trip I've ever had. And we come home to a league game against Middlesbrough, and everybody's hoping, for goodness sake, let's get a win because we're getting too near the bottom end. 42,000. I mean, even after a cup loss to Walsall, we get 42,000 for a Middlesbrough match. And Malcolm MacDonald puts her ahead in. No, he doesn't. John Hickson puts Middlesbrough ahead in 7 minutes. And then in 9 minutes, Malcolm MacDonald equalises. And then just on 70 minutes, Mickey Burns scores the winner, and we get a 2-0 victory. And it was a good victory. We played really well, considering how bad we'd played at Walsall. But I have to say the mitigating thing about the Walsall game was it was the pitch. It was a quagmire. People were amazed that the game was allowed to go on. So Middlesbrough came, we beat them 2-1. Team, as typical Joe Harvey, unchanged. Jeff Nutley stayed in the team because he played well for a while. He got in the team, as did Tommy Craig. And Middlesbrough came with a manager called Jack Charlton on this occasion. The team was a strong one. Jim Platt, John Craggs, ex-our players, Stuart Bohm, Madron, Spraggan, Murdoch, Souness, Alan Foggan, David Armstrong, John Hickson, and David Mills. So it was their full side, but we beat them well and truly. It was a good victory, and more importantly, was taken away from the wrong end of the league. We now going away to Luton in the league, and Luton aren't great, but they give us a tough time at St James as well. 19,000 at the game. They give us a tough time at their ground as well at Kenilworth Road. They 1-0, a goal on 6 on the hour. One of the star players, Futcher, scored it, and we came back with a loss, which was bad because they were well below us in the league, and it did nothing for our league position at all, except make everybody in the Gallagher corner get a sweat on about where we were going in the league. So we came home from Luton, come home to a game against Liverpool. Now, 40,000, and even in the Gallagher corner, people were almost praying that we didn't get a shellacking off Liverpool, because that would have really sent me down the league. And of course, typical Newcastle, John Tudor and Malcolm MacDonald together tore Liverpool apart, and we won 4-1. And Tudor 7 minutes, MacDonald 14, 72, Stuart Barraglough 23, and they got a consolation just towards the end of the game. So a 4-1 win that nobody really anticipated, considering it was their strongest team that we played. And by now, of course, their manager was Bob Paisley. It wasn't the old guy that was their manager, the Scotsman. But same team, Clements, Neil, Lindsay, Phil Thompson, who we see on the television a lot, Peter Cormack, Emlyn Hughes, Kevin Keegan, Brian Hall, who scored their consolation goal, Steve Highway, John Tushak, the Welshman, and Ian Callaghan, the England player. But it was a dazzling win, is how I describe it, because the football that was played, and MacDonald and Tudor just were unstoppable. So then we come to another home match against Burnley, and having had the 1,000 at Turf Moor, nobody's sure what's going to happen here. But 41,000, we needn't have worried, because Malcolm MacDonald 2 goals, Stuart Barraglough the 3rd goal, and we were 3-0 winners by half-time. And the sighs of relief around the Gallagher corner were palpable. You could see people, you could hear them sighing in relief, because they knew we were going in the right direction. The next game is an away game at Chelsea, and I think there might be a programme for this one. And 28,000 at the game, but never an easy place to go. Always think it's a hard place, and hard place it was. By half time, we're 2-0 down, and everybody thought, oh God, is this going to be another 5? But after half time, thanks to Malcolm MacDonald and John Tudor, we pulled 2 back and got the 2-2. And then very stupidly, we gave away a penalty, and John Hollins got the victory and that's the teams from inside the programme, which you can't always see when you do that sort of thing. And that's Supermac against Chelsea. It was having gone down early, everybody thought we're going to get pasted, but they come back strongly. And as I say, thanks to Supermac and John Tudor, we give them, at least give them a game to remember. And more importantly, it didn't damage our goal difference that much, because goal difference was calculated quite different in those days to what it is now. And we then came to a match away at West Ham, well, everybody thinks that after the Chelsea game we'll be lucky to get away without a hiding. 34,000 at Upton Park, and lo and behold, surprise, surprise, thanks to Malcolm MacDonald, 26 minutes, 1-0 win, and never looked like losing it, is my memory of how the match was reported. And a good game by all accounts. So that helps with slide up the league table again. And John Lyle is still their manager. I didn't know much about. He was a good player, but a very quiet man. Didn't look like the sort of person who would go into management, but he did. And then just to add grist to the mill in the middle of a relegation fight, what do? We'll have a friendly. On the 18th of March, they arranged a friendly against Internacional from Brazil. And people went to this out of curiosity, as much as anything. 25,000 for a friendly match is not bad, doesn't matter where they were from. And I'm glad I went, because I've seen football of the sort that I would see later on, that I wanted to see here in the UK, because they just outran us, outplayed us. Their skill was just unbelievable. They beat with 3-0, and it was all over by half time virtually. And the second half was a bit an exhibition. It was the Brazilian players running rings round our players, which was quite sad in some ways, but you couldn't help but admire the skill. Breathtaking is how the only way you could describe it. So the next match was an away game at Ipswich, and we hoping to get something out of it because of our precarious league position, but unfortunately it's another occasion where we flatter to deceive, going on in the lead early through Malcolm MacDonald and John Tudor, and then Ipswich hit with a barrage. Billy Hamilton scores a hat-trick, Hunter scores a goal, and then David Johnson scores a goal. So by the hour, they're 5-3 up, and John Tudor gets another consolation, and we end up 5-4. So that's another quite heavy defeat. And the number of fives we've leaked in over the last few games, anybody that's remembered what we've been talking about, 5 against Spurs, 5 against Chelsea, etc., etc. It was not doing a goal difference any good at all. So we'll lose 5-4. And then straight away, we're off on the Tuesday at Arsenal for another away game, which is not going to be easy. And it's a 36,000 crowd at Highbury. And, it was a repeat of the Ipswich game. They went ahead early on and just stayed ahead. And then in the second half, added 2 more goals and beat with 3-0. A game in which, as I understand it, we were never really in. Arsenal just coasted the game, I think is the only way to describe it. And they had all their big stars in the game, names that people remember. New goalkeeper, Bertie Mee was manager of Arsenal by now. Another well-regarded coach who had been promoted from the coaching staff to be manager at Arsenal, and was a good manager and took them to at least one title, if not 2. And so the stars was Pat Rice, Sammy Nelson, and then in the midfield suddenly appeared a young man called Will Frostron, who they paid a fortune to the Mackhams for, Star England schoolboy, and instead of coming to the Magpies, he went to the Mackhams, and within a season he was transferred to Arsenal for £200,000 or £300,000, which was regarded as potty, but he repaid it because he was a brilliant player for them. Alan Ball in the front line, Brian Kidd from Manchester United, and Liam Brady also from Manchester United. So that was the Arsenal team that turned us over 3-0. So we're now heading home and desperate for a win, and perhaps one of the least likely people to come to St James's Park to give a win were Derby County, who were challenging for the title by now, and at 33,000 at the game.
Was that Cloughie's era?
Well, I'll tell you now. It's not yet. It's still Dave Mackay. Dave Mackay. Yeah,
got you. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Cloughie's another few years on yet.
Right. All right.
When he takes over. But they were fighting for the title, and with their names that people knew: Peter Daniel, David Nish, Bruce Rioch, Colin Todd, Archie Gemmell, Kevin Hector, Alan Hinton, all international class players, and it just outplayed us. Basically, we had our usual team out, and by now Jeff Nulty's a fixture in the team because he'd been playing so well. But we 2-0 basically was the score, and it. One in each half, and as a game, my memory is that we hardly got into the game, Derby wasn't much help. They were coming home, and to make things worse, our next away game is at Liverpool, is at Anfield, and it's always going to be hard there. Well. The reality in life is we didn't turn up. 44,000 at the game. Keegan scored. Toshak scored 2. And just to rub things, the salt into the wound, Terry McDermott added the 4th just before the end, just to rub it in. And we lost 4-0, which was a disaster in terms of our league position. But, when you look at the Liverpool team, Clements, Tommy Smith, the Anfield Iron, Phil Neal, Phil Thompson, Peter Cormack, Emlyn Hughes, Kevin Keegan, Brian Hall, Terry McDermott, John Tashak, and Ian Callahan, and Bob Paisley still their manager then, but we were never in the game is the honest answer. So we then. That was on a Tuesday night. Then on the Saturday, just to rub salt into the wounds, we go to our other arch enemy for an away game, to Leeds United. Now, we're having getting throttled at Anfield, going to Ellen Road straight after, before 44,000 crowd. We anybody in their right mind thought, well, this isn't going to be much better. But lo and behold, just when you don't expect them to, they came out fighting, and Jeff Nulty scored a brilliant goal in 2 minutes, and from then on it was a backs to the wall fight, which they did very, very ably. Looked like they were going to get a win out of it, but 85 minutes, 5 minutes from the end, Sniffer Clark scores an equaliser to get the 1-1 for Leeds, and. Disappointing, I think, is how people would describe it, because the team really battled for that after that early goal, and it didn't come off. So we get a 1-1 at Leeds, and we're heading home now. So, and Leeds team, of course, is by now all internationals. Bremner, Madeley, Hunter, Bite Your Legs, Norman Hunter. Duncan McKenzie, Alan Clark, Joe Jordan, Johnny Giles, and Frankie Gray. Gray, Scottish winger, very tricky winger. Other names in there, well, Norman Hunter, a Geordie from Gateshead, got the nickname of Bite Your Legs, Norman, because he used to. He was a hacker. He used to take people's ankles away. And Johnny Giles, Irish star, great player, but a very, very nasty player, and caused one or two injuries in matches I've seen. I remember being at our rivals' ground at Joker Park when he put Willie McPhee out of the game. He broke Willie McPhee's leg in a tackle, which even nowadays would have got you sent off straight away, straight red card. But that was Johnny Giles, I'm afraid. So anyway, we got a 1-1 out of that, thanks to Jeff Nulty's early goal. And we're now home to QPR, and now below halfway, really struggling to stay up in the top half, and praying that we're going to get something out of QPR. Well, we did, not quite what we expected, because just to put sweat on the Gallagher corner, Jerry Francis scored a penalty in 20 minutes, and they were in the lead, and John Tudor got an equaliser in 50 minutes. And then Malcolm MacDonald got us put one lead 2-1 at 77 minutes. And then typical Newcastle, 85 minutes, 5 minutes from the end, before a £30,000 crowd, Gillard scored the winner for QPR. Equaliser for QPR. However, 1 point was better than none at the state we were in. And yet again, in the Gallagher corner, they went off the booze, even though it was a draw. The crowd was giving them stick, and it was more about where we are and the fear of where we were headed, I think, more than anything. So we get rid of QPR, and we're away to Leicester City. Leicester's programme's always different, I think. Quite nice, colourful programmes. We go away to Leicester City, and hoping above hopes that we might get something at Leicester, but no such hope. We get well and truly throttled. 4-0. 4-0. It was 2-0 at half time, with Lee Garland 2, and then Frank Worthing got another one just before the end. 24,000 at the game, but it was the last thing we needed in terms of a league position. It was a 4-0 defeat at Leicester, and to say that put the Gallagher corner's nerves on edge is not exaggerating, believe you me. So we now come home, and we're looking for a home win, hopefully against Everton. I mean, we give them a good game at their ground, and we hadn't been, though we'd got beat, we hadn't been playing that badly. But such is life, I'm afraid. 30,000 crowd seen we lose 1-0 to a Dobson goal on 87 minutes. I mean, you can imagine the groans in the crowd, and particularly in the Gallagher corner when that winner went in for Everton. And again, at the end of that match, very, very loud now, the chorus of boos from around, not just from the Gallagher corner, but from the entire ground, and in the paddock area, chants of Harvey out could be heard right around the ground, which was, for me, quite sad, because the man had done more than he had to do for Newcastle United and for us as fans. So next game, we're away to Stoke, and anything from Stoke, 33,000 at the game, would be a bonus. And to say, to be fair to the lads, they give it their all, and they got a 0-0 draw, and really put up quite a fight, and were unlucky not to get a win out of it. But they got a 0-0 draw. Stoke by now had Tony Waddington as their manager, an old player of theirs. Peter Shilton had moved from Leicester in goal, still the England goalkeeper. And Stoke had bought quite a few good players. As I said earlier, Alan Hudson had gone to Stoke, Jimmy Greenhoff and Jeff Hurst. So they were quite a strong team. And so a 0-0 at Stoke at that time wasn't a bad result by any stretch of the imagination. and at least there was a point. It give us some breathing space. I think that there may be another picture after that with an action picture from Stoke.
No, I haven't. No.
Right. So now we're home to Arsenal, and what we're going to do against Arsenal? Arsenal are amongst the top 4 fighting for the championship, and people don't think we've got hope and hell's chance of getting anything out of this game. 22,000 at the game, that tells you about how the crowd's feeling. Normally Arsenal would get 50,000. 22,000 at the game. But typical Newcastle, they go down to an early 4-minute goal to Hornby, and then after half-time, just before half-time, Tommy Craig equalises. Then after half-time, Malcolm MacDonald and Alex Bruce go 2 more, and we end up beating Arsenal 3-1, which is a result that, couldn't be imagined by the Gallagher corner at that particular time. We were playing so badly, and they were playing so well. And as I say, challenging for the league. So here we are, hoping we're not in relegation trouble, but a heavy defeat in the next game against Birmingham at home might put with there. But lo and behold, we lost 2-1, and we were pretty awful. Malcolm MacDonald got a goal, but by then Birmingham were already 2-0 up, and 20,000 in the ground. And again, that tells you what the crowd thought of what was happening at St James's Park. And after that match, there were, because we lost, but anyway, the booing and the chanting of Harvey out was all around the ground by then. And I know I and my father and most of my family felt a bit upset about that, because you had to reckon what Harvey put up with for the previous 3 or 4 years with no money at all because of the ground development. But anyway, football fans being football fans will have their say. And 2 goals, one from Howard Kendall and from, one from Howard Kendall and one from Pendry, give Birmingham a 2-1 win. So that was the last league game, but not the end of the season, of course, because Newcastle love their friendlies, don't they? And there were 2 friendlies on the 28th of April, the 30th of April, against the Mackhams. And I thought, well, what's that about? Well, that's what it's about. David Craig decided to have his testimonial as a trophy, and he set up a trophy between Sunderland and Newcastle on a 2-leg basis. And we played the Mackhams away on the Monday night and beat them. Got beat 3-2. 13,000 at that game. And then on the Wednesday night, 2 nights later, we played them at St James's and beat them 5-2. 5-3 rather, with Supermax scoring 2, Burns, Tudor and Kennedy scoring, and Kerr, Mitchell and Robson scored for the Mackhams. 22,000 at St James's. So that's an overall crowd for David Craig for his testimonial, which was quite decent, I thought, and a nice lad, David. He deserves all he got, because he good servant, but a nice lad. He when he retired, he got a newspaper shop just round the corner from where O'Neill eventually lived, and when he used to go in there for his papers and have a natter for him. And then just to top the season off, we played a friendly against Hearts on the Saturday early in May, and away at Tynecastle, and with a 2-2 draw with the 8,000 crowd at Hearts. So that was the season that was. And
Did Jingy have a testimonial that year?
No,
because David Cook sent us a photograph of that, and I'm not sure what it was. Maybe that's for a different season. Souvenir testimonial match, Jinky Smith. So That might be this season. It might be not. It doesn't have a date on it, so I kept it
No.
out. I kept
Well,
it out. And
in
it had
fact,
a
when I
team.
look at the team there that you just had on, it had
Alan Foggin, John
Alan
Tudor, Malcolm MacDonald, Tony Green.
yeah,
So is that the
Tony,
season before?
Liam
David Craig, John
McFord,
Craggs, Ronnie Guthrie, John
Ronnie Guthrie,
McNamee,
John
Bob
McNamee.
Moncur. That must be the season before.
Must have been.
Well, there
On
we
the
go.
other-
Thanks for sending that, David.
Yes, I'm sure that must have been. Well, I've missed that one completely.
And
Unless
this
he,
is, he
unless he
also
brought
sent
that
us this,
team back.
George. Look, he also sent us this. Does this bring back memories?
If I can see it. Oh, yes.
It's a token sheet.
Yes, for the programs, yeah. So you can get your cup tickets. Oh, God, yes. Please,
There's a handy thing, isn't there? We could bring that back. We could bring it back.
Well, it would be better than the lottery we faced for the cup final, wouldn't it? It would be a more understandable basis for doing it. Anyway, that's what it is. And as I say, the sad thing for that season for me was it was the beginning of the end for poor Joe Harvey, and I don't think he deserved that. We ended up 15th as it happens, but largely on goal difference more than points. So those big 5-something losses nearly cost us the league, really. But Malcolm MacDonald, top scorer, as you probably gathered from the goals, are 32 goals in that season. More than half of the total that was scored came from Malcolm, and a large chunk from Mickey Burns, 10 from Mickey Burns, and about the same number from John Tudor. So, we scored them, but by hell, we'll let them in as well. So, good season, but a disappointing one in some ways.
Fantastic, George. As always, mate, great to get your insight. Looking forward to the next one. Maybe another trip to Wembley. Who knows?
Who knows?
Take care, George.
Thanks, Steve. Good to see you as always.
And you, mate. Bye-bye.
All the best, everybody.
Big thanks to all our sponsors. Thanks to Skips and Bins. Telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website skipsandbins.com. Easy contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria, and you can find them at mrvickies.co.uk. Email info@mrvickies.co.uk and place an order by phoning 01768 210 102. Thanks to Fruity Vita Getaways. Book your holidays or short breaks in the UK or around the world with them. Let them find your happy place. ABTA and ATOL registered. You can contact them by emailing fruityvitagetaways@gmail.com. Call or text 0792 842 7895 and join their Facebook group at Fruity Vita Getaways. Thanks to Media Arts for all the technical help and videos that they do. And thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle. If you want to join the channel, click join and you can see the various rates that you can pay to help support us. If you want to join by subscribing, hit the subscribe button. That is free. Hit the thumb up under the video to help the algorithm and click share to other social media platforms. If you do subscribe, we do give you a free car sticker. Just email John at nufcmatters.com and he will post you one out. If you want to join the cult, which is a one-off payment of £25, where you get a scarf, a pen, a cup, and entry into the monthly draw, then go to nufcmatters.com and look for the cult membership or put your phone over this smart code and it will take you straight there. We are available as well as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, and the rest. And we do support the food bank on this channel. So if you want to make a virtual donation from anywhere in the world, go to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk and put your money into the match day bucket. We've got some events coming up. First off in April, April the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th and 11th. Peter Beardsley Soccer School is back for ages 6 to 16 years. Go to peterbeardsley.soccerschool.com for more information. An evening with John Anderson at the Time House Surf Cafe, Tuesday the 18th of April. Book your tickets direct from the venue. An evening with Frank Clark and John Gibson 2 nights later, Thursday the 20th of April at the Irish Centre. Tickets from nufcmatters.com. An evening with Nobby Solano at Laurels in Whitley Bay is May the 11th. So contact the venue direct if you want to go to that event. And we've got our NUFC Matters end of season party, which is the 27th of May at 7 o'clock. Tickets are a tenner from nufcmatters.com. An evening with Rob Lee at Louis Liquor Store, 1st of June, and tickets direct from the venue. And an evening with Rob Lee, Lee Clark and John Beresford, Friday the 2nd of June at the Grand Hotel Gosforth, which is in aid of the Healing Tour charity. And you can get your tickets direct from them at the healingtour.org.uk website. Just click events. A little bit later in the year, an evening with Gavin Peacock, July the 10th. Tickets from nufcmatters.com for that one. And if you like your boxing, a night of champions featuring Frank Bruno, Ricky Hatton, Nigel Benn and Joe Calzaghe. Tickets for that one from goldstarpromotions.com.